Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to help you get informed, fast, cutting through all the noise, the digital world that just keeps changing so rapidly. And with that speed, we're seeing governments everywhere trying to figure out how to, manage online content. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something pretty significant that just happened in India, a government action that's definitely making waves across its huge digital scene. So here's the headline fact, the thing everyone's talking about. India's Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, they've just put out this blanket ban. And it's not small. It's on 25 different apps and websites. 25. That's a big number, right? A really impactful move, especially when you think about how many digital consumers there are in India.
Yeah, it really is. And what's particularly interesting here is the why. Why these specific platforms? Well, the ministry's direct accusation was that they were streaming or maybe advertising material that was sexually explicit and indecent. They apparently did internal reviews, and those flagged what they called repeated violations of public decency norms. Right. Things like, pornographic ads or adult videos that were sort of hidden, masked under regular entertainment content.
Okay.
So yeah, it wasn't just a random sweep. It looks like a pretty targeted action against a certain kind of content that, they felt crossed some clear lines.
Right. And when you see something this drastic, you naturally start asking, okay, what's the legal basis? How can they enforce such a sweeping ban? And who exactly got hit by this? And maybe more importantly, what kind of message does this send out to India's, massive and growing OTT sector, the streaming services? Think of this deep dive as a crucial way to understand how digital content is being managed, how it's being regulated in one of the world's really major markets. So for a move this big, there must be a solid legal foundation, right? What specific laws did the government actually use here?
Yeah, and this is where it gets quite insightful. They didn't just rely on one single piece of legislation. It was more like a multi-layered legal strategy. The main triggers seem to be Section 67 and Section 67A of the Information Technology Act. That's the IT Act of 2000. Okay. These sections, broadly speaking, they prohibit publishing or transmitting obscene material and also sexually explicit material in electronic form. They're essentially the main tools the government has for policing digital content. And this ban, it shows they're definitely willing to use them quite aggressively.
Yeah, the IT Act makes sense.
But they didn't stop there. They also invoked Section 294 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the BNS, from 2023. That one deals with obscene acts and songs in public places. So an older concept applied now. And also, quite significantly, Section 4 of the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act of 1986. That's a law specifically aimed at penalizing, indecent portrayals of women in media.
Wow.
So what's really revealing is how they've combined these older sort of pre-digital era laws with the more recent IT Act. It creates this really dense legal net, Yeah. Doesn't leave much wiggle room for the platforms.
Yeah.
And it sets a strong precedent, I think, for future content arguments, not just about obscenity either.
That is quite a comprehensive approach. So beyond these laws about the content itself, what about the platforms, their liability? How does this affect them directly?
That's a crucial point. The government also pointed to Section 79(3)(b) of the IT Act.
Okay, Section 79.
Right. And this specific part, it basically removes what's called intermediary protection. That's like a safe harbor for platforms if they don't take down unlawful content after they've been officially notified.
Ah, so it put the onus on them.
Exactly. It's a critical clause because it makes the platforms legally vulnerable if they ignore official takedown notices. It shifts a huge amount of responsibility onto them to, police their own content or face some pretty serious consequences.
Okay, so they brought out all these legal heavy hitters. Which specific platforms found themselves on the receiving end? You said 25, but were there any really well-known names involved, and what does that tell us?
Well, the actual orders went out to the internet service providers, the ISPs, telling them to block access. And yeah, it was a pretty broad range of streaming services and apps. The full list, it includes a lot of perhaps lesser-known names, but some of the more prominent ones that were affected included platforms like ALTT, ULLU, and also Big Shots.
Right, I've heard of some of those.
Yeah. And what's quite notable is that many of these are actually homegrown Indian OTT platforms.
Oh.
Platforms that have, you could argue, been pushing the boundaries a bit with their content. So it suggests this ban wasn't just, a random broad stroke. It feels more like a targeted message, maybe particularly to domestic content creators, telling them to perhaps self-regulate a bit more strictly.
That's a really interesting point. Was this move completely out of the blue, or had these platforms maybe been warned before?
Good question. And no, it doesn't seem like it was a total surprise attack. The information suggests there was actually a history here. These platforms had reportedly failed to take corrective action even after they'd received previous warnings. So this ban looks more like the culmination of, repeated issues and ignored notices. It signals that the government isn't just like reacting passively, but is actively enforcing its rules for digital content.
And thinking about all the other streaming services operating in India, what's the bigger message here? What should the industry as a whole take away from this?
Well, it definitely signals that the government is drawing a much clearer, maybe a firmer line in the sand, a line between, say, freedom of content on one side and moral and legal responsibility on the other. The ministry also explicitly reminded platforms and the intermediaries like ISPs that if they don't act on complaints and these legal notices, they could face criminal liability.
Yeah.
And they could lose those really important safe harbor protections we talked about under Section 79. So this action, it really sets a strong precedent for accountability in the digital space. It underlines that content creators, distributors, they're expected to be proactive to ensure they're complying with the laws.
Okay, so let's try and bring this together for you, our listener. This deep dive, we've unpacked a really significant action by the Indian government, this blanket ban on 25 apps and websites. We've looked at the pretty comprehensive legal framework they use to justify it, that mix of older laws and the newer IT Act. And we've seen how it affected a whole range of platforms, maybe especially some of the homegrown Indian ones.
Yeah.
So it's more than just a ban, isn't it? It feels like a powerful statement, drawing a clearer line between content freedom and the responsibilities, both moral and legal, that digital platforms are expected to uphold.
Absolutely. And if you zoom out, look at the bigger picture, the specific move in India, well, it's almost certainly going to spark more debate globally, actually, about free speech, about censorship, and, the whole tricky issue of content moderation, particularly in such a diverse and fast-moving digital environment like India. So maybe here's a thought, something provocative for you to consider as we wrap up. In a country as incredibly diverse as India, or really, in any nation where the digital landscape is evolving so quickly, how do we actually navigate that tension, that complex balance between wanting to foster innovation and free expression, while at the same time needing to ensure public decency and uphold national laws? This action by the Indian government, it's not just about banning specific apps. It's a powerful statement, really. And it kind of forces us all to reflect on this ongoing critical balance between content freedom and regulatory oversight. Where exactly should that line be drawn? That's the big question, isn't it?